If you've ever taken a DNA test, 23andMe, Ancestry, any of them, you've probably noticed hundreds of little percentages spread across your results. Most people spend a few minutes looking through them, curious about where their family came from, before moving on. Then somewhere on that report, there's a small percentage labeled Neanderthal. Most people scroll right past it because it doesn't seem important. But that tiny number means something most people get completely wrong. It doesn't simply tell you that Neanderthals existed sometime in the distant past. It means a human species that officially disappeared around 40,000 years ago never completely disappeared. A small part of them is still alive inside you.
That sounds impossible, because we're taught that extinction means the absolute end of a species. We picture Neanderthals as primitive cave dwellers who vanished while modern humans inherited the Earth. For decades, that's exactly what scientists believed. But archaeology, genetics, and decades of new discoveries have completely rewritten that story. Today, we know Neanderthals weren't mindless cavemen wandering through frozen wilderness. They built sophisticated stone tools, hunted enormous Ice Age animals, mastered fire, and adapted to one of the harshest climates humans have ever faced. They cared for injured family members, protected their children, and survived together for hundreds of thousands of years. Then, something happened that quietly changed the future of humanity forever. Neanderthals met another kind of human. Us.
This wasn't one brief encounter or a single chance meeting between strangers crossing the wilderness. It happened over thousands of years as both groups continued living across the same frozen landscapes. Generation after generation, new families were born while both species continued adapting to the Ice Age. Their paths crossed again and again as they searched for food, shelter, and survival. Sometimes they probably competed for the very same animals and hunting grounds. Other times they may have lived surprisingly close to one another without constant conflict. But over countless generations, something slowly began to change. Those encounters became relationships, and eventually, families were formed. We know this today because modern science uncovered evidence that could never have been imagined before. That evidence wasn't carved into stone or hidden in ancient caves. It was written inside our own DNA. The biggest breakthrough arrived in 2010, when scientists successfully decoded the Neanderthal genome. For the first time, researchers could compare the DNA of an extinct human species with living people. They carefully compared thousands of genetic markers collected from people around the world. The question was simple: did any of that ancient DNA still survive today? The answer completely changed our understanding of human history. Researchers discovered that people whose ancestors lived outside Africa still carried inherited Neanderthal DNA inside their genomes. For most people, the amount was surprisingly small, usually somewhere between 1% and 2%. But even that tiny amount told an extraordinary story. That small percentage proved that another human species never completely disappeared. It survived through us. But when did all of this actually happen? When did our ancestors first meet another human species? To find the answer, we have to travel back nearly 60,000 years. The world looked completely different from the one we know today. Small groups of modern humans began leaving Africa in search of food, safety, and new opportunities. They weren't explorers. They were simply trying to survive in a changing world. Their journey carried them farther north with every generation. Eventually, they reached Europe and Western Asia, where an unexpected encounter awaited them. But those lands weren't empty. Someone had already called them home for hundreds of thousands of years. Those people were the Neanderthals, perfectly adapted to the frozen Ice Age landscape. They had survived there through countless winters long before modern humans ever arrived. Every mountain, valley, and river was already familiar territory to them.
They knew where animals migrated and where the safest caves could be found. Those caves weren't just shelters, they were homes passed down across generations. They understood the land in ways that newcomers never could. Then history reached a turning point that neither species could have imagined. Another kind of human had entered their world for the very first time. Suddenly, two intelligent human species were living across the same landscapes. And for thousands of years, neither one simply disappeared. They hunted the same herds, crossed the same rivers, and survived the same brutal winters. Every shared season brought new opportunities for both conflict and connection.
Then, somewhere in that vast Ice Age world, everything quietly changed. The distance between these two human species slowly disappeared. Two different groups stood only a few steps apart. They looked different, but they were unmistakably human. For the first time, they were looking directly into each other's eyes. We'll probably never know what those first conversations sounded like. We don't even know if they could understand each other's words. Yet one incredible fact is beyond any doubt. Those meetings didn't end with both groups walking away forever. At some point, children were born from those relationships. Those children carried DNA from both modern humans and Neanderthals. And that's exactly why this story continues today. Those ancient genes never disappeared with the Neanderthals themselves. They didn't survive as a separate civilization hidden somewhere in history. Their descendants continued living, generation after generation. Every family passed those tiny DNA fragments to the next. Thousands of years passed, civilizations rose and fell, yet those genes remained. Eventually, only one human species remained on Earth. But the genetic memory of the other species quietly lived on inside us. In that sense, Neanderthals never vanished completely. They became part of our own human story. Today, scientists can actually measure those surviving Neanderthal genes inside your DNA. They can't tell by your appearance or the way you look. They can't measure it by your height, your voice, or your body. The only reliable way is by reading the genetic code hidden inside every cell. And that's exactly where this ancient story becomes surprisingly personal. Those inherited Neanderthal genes didn't simply survive by accident. Some of them are still active inside modern humans today. Researchers believe a few continue influencing certain biological traits. Some have been linked to parts of our immune system and how our bodies respond to disease. Others may have helped our ancestors survive unfamiliar environments after leaving Africa. Some inherited variants are also connected to skin, hair, and adaptation to colder climates. Scientists have also found links to a few modern health conditions, although the research is still continuing. Many of these discoveries are still being tested, refined, and better understood every year. With every new fossil and every new genome, another piece of the puzzle appears. Human history becomes a little clearer with every discovery. So, the next time you open your DNA results and your eyes land on that tiny Neanderthal percentage, remember that you're looking at one of the oldest surviving connections in human history. It isn't just another statistic on a screen. It represents a story carried across 40,000 years. It's proof that although the Neanderthals disappeared from the Earth, a small part of them is still traveling through your DNA, right now.